Good afternoon, and welcome to Georgetown University. And I am Maria Conchan, the Dean of the McCourt School of Public Policy, and I am delighted to welcome you to our event in honor of Women's History Month. I'm delighted to see such a full Gaston Hall the day before spring break starts. This will be a conversation with Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and Julie Mason, the host of Press Pool with Julie Mason on SiriusXM. I want to thank the McCourt School's Institute of Politics and Public Service, or GU Politics, as we call it, and their partners at SiriusXM for organizing this event. GU Politics is dedicated to reconnecting young people with the notion that politics is a noble vehicle for public service. A noble vehicle for public service. In line with this mission, we are glad to host this conversation focused on Speaker Pelosi's historic leadership within the context of the 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. Speaker Pelosi, who made history in 2007 by becoming the first female Speaker of the House, is here today to discuss the history and impact of the 19th Amendment and the impact it's had on both our history and culture over the last 100 years, and more personally, the women who have influenced her life and her career path. Convenings like the event today are a critical complement to the classroom learning offered at McCourt and at Georgetown. Our shared history is deeply rooted in the belief in the importance of the exchange of ideas and respectful dialogue. To that end, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of Speaker Pelosi. The McCourt School, Georgetown, and GU Politics also share a deep commitment to diversity and inclusion. And I hope that today's conversation about women's participation, the history of the 19th Amendment, and its impact on policy and politics, and the culture of women's leadership will help us all think more deeply not only about our history, but also about the future of other movements to raise the voices of underrepresented groups in our country and on our globe. The McCourt School's faculty and research centers are at the cutting edge of providing research and evidence on public policies that affect women as leaders, as workers, and in our home lives, here in the US and across the globe, including women working in the labor force, access to health care, and equal pay. These issues are often brought to life at McCourt through the programming of our Women in Public Policy initiative, one of our many student-run organizations, this one dedicated to developing exceptional female leaders in public policy and increasing awareness of issues that disproportionately affect women and girls. They do this through strategic partnerships, service, and advocacy. In that context, I'd like to introduce Morgan Sasser, a Women in Public Policy Initiative's first-year vice president, who will introduce Speaker Pelosi and Julie Mason. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Conchan. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Morgan Sasser, and I am a first-year student at the McCourt School of Public Policy. As a representative of the Women in Public Policy Initiative, it is so encouraging to see everyone gathered here to pause and reflect for a moment on the impact of the 19th Amendment. The Women in Public Policy Initiative is dedicated to fostering female leadership, both at McCourt and in the wider Georgetown community. We seek to provide an inclusive forum for students interested in building professional skills, connecting with alumni, and discussing the issues that women face in the policy world. I am so happy to say that we have many men in our membership as well, and I have so appreciated their active participation in these conversations around women's issues. I now want to take a moment to thank everyone at Georgetown's Institute of Politics and Public Service and SiriusXM's POTUS channel for putting together this amazing event and giving us all the opportunity to learn from one of our nation's great leaders. Geopolitics has been instrumental in shaping my experience at Georgetown. It has provided me with opportunities to explore the inner workings of our political system, and I have learned so much about my goals and my own potential to drive change through my involvement with this organization. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Julie Mason, host of the Press Pool with Julie Mason on SiriusXM, who will lead a conversation with our distinguished guest, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi has served her constituents in California since 1987, and she made history when she became the first woman to lead a political party in Congress in 2002. She made history again 5 years later when she became the first woman to be elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. Now, she continues to be a trailblazer in her second speakership. She is passionate, dedicated, and unwavering in her commitment to public service. Most of all, she is an inspiration to women and men who are seeking to make a change in the world, and I am so thrilled that she is here with us today. Please join me in welcoming Speaker Nancy Pelosi, hosted by Julie Mason.
Julie. Thank you so much for everyone who came out today, and of course, Speaker Pelosi, great to have you as well.
My pleasure.
Happy anniversary, 19th Amendment.
Isn't that something?
Right?
Wow. Happy anniversary.
It was passed just in time for the 1920 presidential election, but it would take another 10 years for women to really turn out to vote. There was some conflict at the time between the suffragists and the abolitionists. And I wonder, do you still feel echoes of that in Democratic politics?
Not really. No, I think that everybody has the right to vote now. But first of all, Julie, thank you. And thank you, Morgan, for your kind introduction. Thank you to Dean McCourt for your hospitality today and your leadership at the McCourt School of Public Policy. And to all of you, Dean Hellman, we're so proud of you at the Foreign Service School. We're just here for Mass with some from the Foreign Service School in February, right here in Gaston Hall, and with my grandson Liam, who is here as well. So, in any event, my college classmate Mary Beta is here. We went to Trinity College. In those days, Georgetown was not so co-ed, so that was a sister school. So anyway, we've had a relationship, all of us, with Georgetown for a long time. My husband went here. 3 of my children did. My son-in-law. I have an honorary degree. I don't know if that counts, but whatever. Anyway, here's the thing. There were some, shall we say, differences of opinion as what should go first, abolition of slavery or suffragist. And abolition, of course, won that. But there were some, like Frederick Douglass, who was both an abolitionist and a suffragist. And eventually, the women's right to vote came much later. When it came, though, what was interesting to me, because I heard in the introduction that I was going to tell you something about the history of it. When it came, the headlines the next day said, "Women given the right to vote." No such thing. Women weren't given anything. Women marched, women starved, women were starved, women sacrificed for decades in order to achieve the right to vote. And again, we must make sure that it took some time for people to get the implementation of it all. But we had a woman member of Congress before women had the right to vote in the country from Montana, Jeanette Rankin. So we're very proud of the fact. She was a Republican. She came to Congress to vote against World War I. She did. She lost. She came back to vote against World War II. She lost. And then she ran for Senate or something, whatever. But in any event, what we're so proud of is that in this 100th anniversary of women having the right to vote, having achieved, worked, and having the right to vote, there are over 100 women in the House of Representatives for the first time. My former colleague, Joe Crowley, is here with his nephew, Owen, Joe Crowley of New York. And Joe can attest to how hard he and all of us fought to make sure that of those 106, it's 106 women in the House. 91 of them are Democrats. I'm not to say that, I'm just saying civics-wise, it's not political. 91 of them were Democrats because we made a decision that we would increase our numbers. When I went there, it was like 12 Democrats, 11 Republicans. Now there are 91 Democrats, 15 Republicans, and we hope their number will grow of women, but we will continue to grow our number. What's interesting, I think, about it is because when I was inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca Falls, New York, says she immodestly, and I want women to be immodest in that respect, just say it. So when I was there, in preparation for it all, we visited, Susan B. Anthony's home, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, all of them, Lucretia Mott, all that. But Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony were a pair. Susan B. Anthony would go to her home, and Elizabeth had a flock of kids, like 5 children, so one would be stirring the pot and the other one would be writing it down. But they plotted, and then Susan B. Anthony was single, so she would be the one who could ride the range and go out there and preach it all. But what was very interesting to me, and I hope to you, is that Elizabeth Cady Stanton had a very progressive father. He bought a house, put it in her name, all of that, in Seneca Falls, and it was like up on a little raised area. But right below it were lots of the shanties, where a lot of immigrant families were workers in the mills, which were in Seneca Falls. And she could hear from her privileged position, little raised area, the domestic violence that was going on down below in families. I'm not saying all families, but she could hear it. And she knew that women had to have more rights and more be able to determine their own fate. So, a mom of 5, I identify with that as a mom of 5, but imagine her courage to take her own blessed experience and take the time to be just to us a person on whose shoulders we stand, because she and all of them, Lucretia Mott and that. And I'll tell you one more story about that, and if you want to go on to some other thing. So when I was elected to leadership, it was the first time I was going to a meeting at the White House. And I wasn't even concerned about it because I've been to the White House many times as an appropriator, as a member of the Intelligence Committee. So I didn't even think about it. I just saw I'm going to a meeting at the White House. When the door opened to this room, it wasn't a big room and not a big table. There was the president, the vice president, and the leaders, House and Senate, Democratic and Republican. I realized this was unlike any meeting I had ever been to at the White House before. In fact, it was unlike any meeting any woman had been to at the White House before. Because women, while they happily so, since Frances Perkins had been members of the cabinet, and that's important. That's really important not to underestimate that. But there was nobody who had been there, whose legitimacy sprang from the appointment of the president, whose vote was the only vote that really counted at the table, but my legitimacy sprang from the members of Congress electing me to be at that table with my own voice, not dependent on being there on the President of the United States. So anyway, so we sit down. George Bush was president. George Bush, gracious, lovely. Bushes are lovely, lovely people. George W. Bush, this was whatever it was when he was president. And he was going on about how welcoming and gracious. And as he was speaking, I was hearing this other thing. I was squeezed in my chair. I couldn't understand why. Joe Crowley's heard this story so many times. I'm sorry, Joe. I squeezed in my chair, and all of a sudden I realized Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Sojourner Truth, and Agnes Paul, and you name it, they were all sitting there on that chair with me, real tight. And I could hear them say, "At last we have a seat at the table." And then they were gone. Boom, they were gone. Now, I've never had that kind of an experience before or since. Then they were gone. And my first reaction was, we want more. We want more. We want more. So this anniversary is so wonderful for America. That it even happened 100 years ago, and that so many people worked on it for so many decades before. And just has made such a difference, because nothing is more wholesome for politics, government, or actually anything, whether it's business or academia or the military or Wall Street, whatever, than the increased participation of women and also the leadership of women. So women, know your power, and it doesn't mean that it's better than men at the table. It means we have to have everybody at the table. So it's a happy 100th anniversary, and we're so excited to, as I say, celebrate it with over 100 women in the House of Representatives.
So with those advances and 100 years past, why are the white garments and the passions of the suffragists so visible now? Why is it so important now?
It is because it's an act of gratitude to them, recognition that without their courage, their determination, their sacrifice, their just optimism that it could happen, it would not have happened. It was a decision that they made. And as you say, over time, some people didn't want to be too aggressive, some wanted to be less assertive, and a priority or another. So it wasn't without its, just as all political or public activity is, not brought without some competition of ideas, and that's a good thing. And that's a good thing. So again, we are saying to them, thank you so much. We stand on your shoulders. We recognize that others stand on ours. And this was probably just such an invigoration of America. But as we say, when I say we want more women, we want more people of color, we want more LGBTQ. And I'm very proud that the caucus that we have, the House Democratic Caucus, is over 60% women, people of color, LGBTQ. This is a remarkable thing for a political party, any place in the world, and in the Congress of the United States.
You've said the equal right.
By the way, is an applause line.
You've said the Equal Rights Amendment would strengthen America, upholding the value of equality in our democracy. Why is this so hard?
Oh, the Equal Rights Amendment? Well, right. Well, we see everything as an opportunity. And if it seems hard, then that's a bigger opportunity. The question now is, should we be limited to the timeline that was put on it before? Otherwise, we do probably have enough states. I mean, there's question about states that might have a rescission, but they really can't do that. But it shouldn't be hard. And one reason I think it may be challenging is that people think that women do not need the Equal Rights Amendment, that it is in the Constitution and in all of our documents for women to have equal rights, but it isn't. And again, when I say it's an opportunity, it's an organizing tool. It attracts so many people to be involved civically, and that's a positive thing. Because whatever we do internally in the Congress in terms of inside mobilization, that's important, but what's really important is the outside mobilization. Lincoln said that public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. So we just want to continue to build the public sentiment for the Equal Rights Amendment, but also for everything that springs from it, and to remove all doubt in anyone's minds. And Dina, I was very interested to hear what you were saying about the orientation you have for women to aspire to greater positions. And when you were speaking, you spoke with such confidence about it. And I think that's the key word for women, confidence. Confidence. Have confidence. Know your power. Know what you bring as individuals that no one else brings to the table in all of this. If there's one message I would leave with some of the women in the room and the men who respect that, I want women to have confidence. That's why I said, I'm in the Hall of Fame and all. I'm bragging. But I want you to also put forth, this is who I am, this is what I've done, and what I can do. And again, it's absolutely necessary. So while it's hard, and I can talk about how hard it is if you want, but I'd rather encourage you to know your power, step up there, whatever it is that you want to do, but know that nobody can do it the way you can because of your experience, because of who you are, and what you bring to the table. And for those of you who happen to be going to Georgetown, with the confidence that you are magnificently educated to take on any task.
Republicans said the Equal Rights Amendment would require taxpayer-funded abortion. Right now, the Supreme Court is considering, that's what they said. The Supreme Court right now is considering an abortion rights case out of Louisiana, requiring doctors at clinics to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. The court has changed significantly since the last time a similar law was struck down, and I imagine this is a matter of some concern.
Can we talk about that here at Georgetown? Is that okay? Do I even have to respond to what they said?
No.
That's
No,
what
I
they
was just
said
putting it
on
out
the
there.
floor of the House, and we're like, what are they talking about? You know, but that's one of the, shall we say, red herrings that they always bring out. Everything's going to be about that. And let me just say, this is a devout Catholic coming from an Italian-American Catholic family in Baltimore, Maryland, very liberal in politics, conservative when it comes to issues like that. My family's probably mostly all pro-life, the Baltimore family. Some of them haven't mentioned much lately, but I think that's probably where they are. I have some stories, but I won't go into them about my parents and all that. But so I respect that people have that point of view, and that's good for them. So when I have this conversation on the floor of the House, I say to my colleagues, you know, because they're always, Nancy Pelosi thinks she knows more about having babies than the Pope. Yes. I say that. So they say that on the floor of the House. I have it in the congressional record. Wow, really? I think the Pope would agree. Now, I hope the Pope would agree. This Pope. Here's the thing. My dear husband, Paul Pelosi, graduate of Georgetown, and I were blessed with 5 children. When we brought our baby home from the hospital, that week, of 5, our oldest child was turning 6. So I say to them, any of you who've had 5 babies in 6 years, we'll talk about this subject. But that was the beautiful blessing for our family. It isn't up to any politician or any court or anybody else to make the determination of the size and timing of someone's family. It's just the way it is. So it's very complicated, this court decision about whether you have to register at a hospital and blah, blah, blah. So I'm hoping that the issue is not the particulars necessarily of the case. The particulars is the precedence of the court. The court has ruled in favor of a woman having the right to choose Roe v. Wade, but also in favor of that opportunity without restriction, as this case would put in the past. So is this court going to abandon its own precedent? And if so, there are a lot of things that are at risk in this court. So we'll see. And the arguments were interesting. I read the arguments. I didn't go there for it because I was trying to pass the coronavirus bill the next day, and so we had work to do. But in any event, hopefully it will honor its own, what the court has done before, because if we abandon the precedent of the court, now some precedent is terrible, like Dred Scott decision, but some precedent in this modern time with respect for women, I hope that they will make the right decision. It's all about Justice Roberts, you know. I think that that's where it lies. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. That's all I would like to say, but I mean, I could go into the particulars of the Texas case versus Louisiana case, but there are too many lawyers in the room for me to do that.
The 2020 Democratic primary this year brought
politics.
four.
Are you allowed to talk politics here? Yeah. Is that allowed?
4 women senators, 1 congresswoman, 1 female self-help guru, with Elizabeth counts. Basically down to 2 old white guys right now. What happened? Why couldn't women get a foothold in this race?
Well, I think that women made progress for women in presidential. Hillary Clinton did. Usually I'm introduced as the highest ranking woman in history, and I could break down and cry every time they say that, because that is not how I thought it would be. I thought we'd have a woman president right now as we speak. That didn't happen for a number of reasons. We won't go into relitigate the election, but I will say that Hillary Clinton really was a trailblazer for women running for president in a very important way. Shirley Chisholm was. Pat Schroeder was, others, but Hillary really getting the nomination of the party, probably one of the most well-prepared people to be president in modern times, and that would include her husband, President Obama, who says that, certainly George Bush, whom I love, maybe go back to his father, who had been a vice president and was, was very well qualified, but it didn't happen then. This time, the field was so big, the support so spread. Perhaps if there hadn't been so many women candidates and a focus on 1 or 2 to begin with, the momentum would have been different. But there were a lot of men who didn't make the cut either. So it's just about having it come in. Now, I will tell you this about my own. I thought that we'd have a woman president long before we'd have a woman Speaker of the House. Because if you want to talk about a glass ceiling, I'll tell you about a marble ceiling. It is very difficult. There's a pecking order from 200 years ago. I'm next, I'm next, I'm next, I'm next. So when I was people urged me to run for leadership. When I did, some of the guys said, I'll call them guys, who said she could run? Poor babies. And then they said, well, we have a lot of women now in the college. They like Nancy. They think she'd be good. And they said, well, why don't the women just make a list of the things they want to do, and we'll do them for them. Poor babies. So the fact, though, is, and I said this at a press conference earlier today because they were asking your very same question, Julie. I said the worst thing I could have ever said to anybody while I was running, or any of my advocates could ever say to anybody, is, you should vote for Nancy because she's a woman. That's the most losing phrase. You have to say, you have to vote for Nancy because she would be the best. We think she would be the best. Because there was just I'm talking, Speaker of the House, the best. And whether I would be the best or not, they thought that of those who put themselves forward. But you have to believe. Let's say this to the young women here. When you put yourself out there, you have to believe that you are the one who can do the job. And then you convince other people of that as well. So I'm used to be very shy, and I had to get through that, so I want you to get through it too. But you can't say to people, you should vote for somebody because they're a woman, or we have to have a woman. It would be great to have a woman, and we should get behind a woman to do it. One of my daughters, Christine, who's a Georgetown grad, Foreign School of Foreign Service, she was all just telling me, now it's just Elizabeth. We can all get behind Elizabeth, and then, of course, Elizabeth out of the race today, because she was excited that there was one woman that we didn't, it wasn't going to be fragmented. Not that, with all the respect in the world for all the other women, including our Kamala from California. But it is, I think, there's certain people who are just not going to vote for a woman. They don't think a woman could be commander-in-chief. And that's why in the Congress, when we have women come, and all members actually, but I especially focus on the women on this, I want them to have a security credential, whether it's armed services, foreign affairs, intelligence, homeland security, veterans affairs. I want them to have standing on a security issue. While we all people think, well, education and healthcare and all, they're women's issues. No, they're everybody's issues, and every issue is a woman's issue. National security, economic growth in our country, the list goes on. So women take ownership of it all, because that's what it takes to be the President of the United States, a grasp of the whole responsibility that is there. But I have a motto. We don't agonize, we organize. And what we're doing, my responsibility is to win the House for the Democrats if we're talking politics. And we had that responsibility, which we achieved 40 seats in the most gerrymandered, voter-suppressed political arena you can name. So we never stopped our engine. We kept our impetus, our momentum going so that we can win the House again, win the Senate, win the White House, win the state legislative races, win the governorships, because it's all very necessary, in our view, to advance our point of view. And again, in doing so, have many more women who could be candidates for these other offices, whether it's women who are whatever the position they're successful in winning. And we'll have a woman president. I know we will. I don't know who it is quite yet. But as I said to them this morning, I think sometimes people decide that somebody, a young man or something, could be president, and there's a kind of a thing that grows around them. But I haven't necessarily seen that around women. Hillary, yes. And so you have to start earlier, and anybody interested in running for president here, just build your confidence, but also take stock of what you have to offer. Because whether you're running for Congress or you're running for president, I say this to the candidates. Why? What is your why? Why do you think it should be you? And why do you want this? What is your vision for America? What do you know about in terms of, I said this also before, what do you know about? Is it climate? Is it education? Is it social justice? What is it, in a couple of those different things? What pulls you into this? As we talked about international affairs and global security, what is it that you want to demonstrate your strength, that you know it, you have judgment? Why? What? Your vision, your knowledge. Do you think strategically? Can you convince people that this is my goal, this is what I know about it, and this is how I'm going to achieve it? Show that. That's all important. But the most important part of it, this is all here, is what is in your heart. People want to see your authenticity. They want to see if you know and care about them. It isn't about your ambition. It's about their aspirations or their apprehensions, their hopes, their fears, their economic security, their health security. What is it how do you connect with them? So whether you're running for president or Congress or city council or just starting out, just understand that all the intellectual part is so important. You'll get that down. That's the easy part. How you connect is important. And this is not for the faint of heart. This is not for the faint of heart. You will become a target. But you can't care about that. You can't care about that. Because once you're in that arena, and Teddy Roosevelt wrote beautifully about being in the arena, not being a spectator to it and criticize, but being in the arena. When you're in that arena, you got to be ready to take a punch. You got to be ready to throw a punch for the children. It's all about the children.
We're getting ready for Q&A.
Children.
I mean, today might be a nice day to make your endorsement. I'd be cool with it. I think the audience would like to know.
Well, let me just say this. I am not going to be making an endorsement. I want the public to register its vote its opinion. But I always, maybe 2 weeks ago, I would have said to my caucus and to my friends or audience, whoever the nominee is, we will, all of us all of us will enthusiastically embrace. Today, I'm saying, whoever the nominee is, we will enthusiastically elbow bump. No more embracing. No more embracing. That's what we've been advised against that, politically or otherwise. So in any event, no, I won't be making an endorsement today.
Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi is with us in honor of Women's History Month and the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. This is a SiriusXM and Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service at the McCourt School Town Hall. We're at beautiful Gaston Hall on Georgetown's campus. We'd love to get some of our SiriusXM listeners and Georgetown students in on this conversation. If you have a question for Speaker Pelosi, I see a line is forming. Please step up, give us your name and your question.
Hello. Hi, Ms. Mason. Hi, Speaker Pelosi. Thank you so much for joining us here on Georgetown's campus today. My name is Kira McCauley. I'm a senior in the college studying government, education, inquiry, and justice, and I will be joining the Teach for America Corps next year. My question for you, as the first female Speaker of the House, do you think there are better prospects for bipartisanship under female leadership? And do you think that this is something that the presidential nominees should consider when they're choosing a running mate, considering both of them are likely to be male?
Well, I think that bipartisanship is very important. And when I was sworn in as Speaker, I said we want to have transparency and openness so people can see what the choices are when we make our votes, that we should strive for bipartisanship. We have a serious responsibility to find common ground where we can. Stand our ground like a rock, that would be Thomas Jefferson, when we can't. But that is absolutely essential, really, to strive to do that. And I have no idea about, well, we don't even know who the nominee is, much less the running mate. But I would think that whoever is on the ticket, one way or another, that president or vice president, that it would be a badge of honor to say, I look forward to working in a bipartisan way for the good of the country. Yeah. And good luck to you with Teach America. That's lovely that you're doing that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, my name is Alvina McHale, fellow alum of Trinity College,
All right.
class of 1969.
Oh, wow, you're
and
younger. Yeah.
all of us have been proud of you throughout your career, but never more so than in the last couple of years. My first vote for president was for George McGovern, so I go back a long time in this political business. It's confounding to me, with the kind of president we currently have in the White House, that Democrats can't find candidates to offer up for president who aren't in their late 70s. I would love to have your perspective on this.
Well, I do think there were some choices who were younger. And again, people have to make a decision. You weigh the equities. As Jerry Brown used to say, when he ran the first time, it was like just out of law school, he said, it's time for new blood. When he ran for governor again, he said, there's no substitute for experience. But there is something to be said for that. But again, let's just put it this way. Campaigns, and I love campaigns. I mean, I love being a legislator. But I love campaigns, too, because it's you just see people speaking out and finding their own voices in all of this. And there were plenty of opportunities in a wide range of age in those. I don't think that, what's funny to me, don't tell anybody I told you this. What's funny to me is I'm the same age as Bernie, and they were like, you're so old. And then they have the whole young nation going for somebody the same age for president of the United States. And I thought, is there a little misogyny in all of this? Same as like Mitch McConnell, the rest of, we're all of that breed, of that generation. But it's different if you're a man, I guess. But I do think that, I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Let me put that authority line there. I don't know how long the next president will serve, if that's one term or two terms. But I do think that if it's one term, that this will be a big transition into a whole other generation of leaders in our country. So I think people, since we're talking president, Civilization, as we know it today, is at stake in this election. It is absolutely imperative that we have a new president in terms of who we are. We asked God to bless America. We did here in the chapel, in the Gaston Hall's chapel in February, just a few weeks ago. What is America? America is our Constitution, the genius of it, the separation of powers to make us a republic, as Franklin said, if we can keep it. 3 separate branches of government as a check and balance on each other. A republic. We have a president who says, Article 2 says I can do whatever I want. No, it doesn't. That's a monarchy. So the Constitution and all the rights contained therein, including freedom of expression, freedom of the press, etc. What is America? People. This beautiful nation, unless you're born a Native American, which is a blessing to you and those who love you and to our country, we are a nation of immigrants. Administration that denigrates newcomers to our country, which are the constant reinvigoration of America with hopes and dreams and aspirations to make the future better for future generations, for the future of their family. And that's the American way to make the future better for future generations. And those immigrants make America more American with that determination and that optimism and that hope and those values. What is America? This beautiful land from sea to shining sea and beyond. This beautiful God's gift, if you believe, as many of us do here, that this is God's creation. We have a moral responsibility to be good stewards of it. But even if you don't, you just believe we have a responsibility to future generations. And it's degraded, in denial about climate change and all the rest of that, dishonor the Constitution, denigrate newcomers, degrade the environment and our values, dishonor our values. Budget's supposed to be a statement of our national values. And what do? Is it a statement of your values? You give a tax cut of nearly $2 trillion to the top 1%, 83 of the benefits to the top 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, while cutting Social Security, Medicare, education, all the investment, food, all of that. So, disloyal to the Constitution, degrading of the environment, denigrating of our people, and devaluing who we are. I think that everything is at stake in this election in terms of the rule of law and the rest, since you brought up the subject of politics. And so we have to win. So again, our difference is from here to here among ourselves, a chasm between here and there. Unfortunately, it didn't used to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. So whatever the age, and by the way, it's a relative thing, age. Just saying that, I was just saying. Thank you. And by the way, I think we have a good choice in the Democratic Party between the two of them.
Speaker Pelosi, thank you so much for coming and sharing your words about bipartisanship and such. My question has to do with that very issue, particularly unity between Democrats and Republicans. As far as actions like ripping up the president's speech after the State of the Union and things like that. In light of the economic prosperity we've seen under the Trump administration that has benefited women and men alike, do you believe there is anything that the president can do right? And do you believe that you are isolating Republican women such as myself?
Let me just say, when I tore up the speech, I was cleaning up my desk of a pack of lies. That's just the way it is. 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 And when the president became president, I hoped and prayed that this could be a good opportunity for our country. But I don't think it is for the reasons I said before, and many more. But I will say this. We all want to have a good economy. I think President Obama got us off on a good course with that. President Trump continues that, but it isn't reaching the bulk of the American people. 40% of the American people do not have $500 if their car breaks down or their water heater fails. And that's for a long time. That's not just under President Trump. So we have to have an economy that works for everyone before we start bragging about how great it is. And, well, we hope the president will sign our bill. When I leave here, I'll go enroll it, which means the speaker signs the bill and the president of the Senate signs the bill, and then the president of the United States signs the bill. We work together to get that done. We try to, and we hope that we can work with him to lower the cost of prescription drugs, raise paychecks by building the infrastructure of America. We have hope that that could happen. But I think that that's what elections are about. They're about, it's not about personal, you know, it shouldn't be about personal. I didn't say anything about his behavior. I just talked about his policies. But that's what elections are about, and that's the vitality of our country. And I will tell you this, I was really hoping that that would be the speech that we were waiting for. I'm a speed reader. I could read ahead on that speech, and I was just appalled that there wasn't a page that I could spare from the rep that didn't have misrepresentations on it. It wasn't true. And to use the Congress, House of the Representatives, the Chamber of the House of Representatives, to use this as a reality show backdrop, giving awards and all that to people who were birther champion and anti-LGBTQ. Well, let me reward that right here in the chamber, and then make a speech that was so full of misrepresentations. No, I was very proud of it. And by the way, it isn't my style. I'm gracious, I'm welcoming. He's a guest in our house, we'll treat him as such. But the guest has to have some demeanor as well that is respectful of the home that the house that he is in.
Thank you so much for coming to speak to us today, Speaker Pelosi. What part do you think that student journalists and students interested in civic service have to play this election season?
Well, you would know better than I because you see it. But it is, what I said to somebody today on another subject, is any assumptions that we have about, well, it has to be this way because history shows that unless it goes this way. I said, any assumptions that we have about politics and elections are obsolete. We're in a whole new world of young people being more interested, more in communication with each other, and that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It has its upside, that is to say, more communication, how we can get together or just communicate on ideas in real time. It has its downside because there's some misuse of it as well in terms of issues that are not necessarily truthful going out there. But nonetheless, to be informed enough to make judgments. And I think that the idea that young people are taking interest, but not only taking interest, but spreading the word on it that's it. Because, you know, let's put it this way, apropos of your question, elections are about the future. It's about our children. That's why I said take the pen. But children. About the children and about the future. So when we talk about that, then the fact that young people take responsibility for communicating their views and the rest, this is very, very wholesome. And I think it probably played a big role, although we didn't get as much participation as we anticipated. So we still have to get more young people to vote, to make sure that they vote. Some races in Virginia, not the other night, but last year, they were determined by a flip of the coin because the races were even. Every vote counts. And again, it's your future. It's your future. Take responsibility for it by voting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. Condolences from my family to yours for the loss of your brother last year.
About what, darling?
The loss of your brother last year.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you
Condolences
so
from my
much.
family to yours.
I appreciate that. Are you from Baltimore?
I'm not. I'm from Virginia, so I know all about that coin flip.
Oh, you know. Well, thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate your saying that, especially in Lent, because it's coming home to me, because he was a daily communicant, and I think of him all the time. Thank you so much.
He passed the same month that would have been my mother's 80th birthday. She passed in February last year.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
And
so
and
right
we
there
lost
with you.
Elijah Cummings right
Yeah.
around the same time, too, so it was really
His
sad.
nephew went to my alma mater, Old Dominion University, and he was killed down there. So when Elijah passed, it brought back a lot of heart memories for us down in the Norfolk area.
Oh, my gosh. And we're so
Yeah,
connected.
our hearts, Virginians' hearts broke twice for Elijah Cummings.
Yes,
because we
that's
remembered his
beautiful.
nephew.
Thank you.
Now, on to politics, sorry.
There.
Is impeachment dead as a check on any future president?
No, I don't think so. No, impeachment is. I don't agree with the judgment that the Senate made, but that doesn't mean that impeachment is. Well, first of all, the president is impeached forever. That is tattooed, branded on him forever, and that's not a positive thing. But no, I think that. I think to the contrary, if we had not done that, then it would be dead, because they would say, well, what's the use of even doing it? So in fact, it really reinforced it. It's a sad thing. It wasn't something that I was eager to do. I tried to find a path, but when the president gave us no choice by undermining our Constitution, placing in jeopardy the integrity of our elections, again undermining our national security, he gave us no choice. That was sad. But I was very proud of our managers, Adam Schiff and the others. Weren't they just magnificent? People told me that they will be teaching their presentations in law schools for a long time to come on how to protect the Constitution. So, thank you. Hopefully we won't need it, but it's there. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for being a really amazing example of how much women, when placed in positions of power, can get done.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
My question for you is, you mentioned working in super gerrymandered districts to win Democratic elections, and how there's a huge difference in women in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and also just the partisan gridlock in general. So my question is, do we need significant institutional reform in America for social progress, or can we work within the institutions we have to change our culture?
Well, what suggestion would you have?
Just like the Electoral College with
Sure.
campaign finance,
Right.
gerrymandering.
Well, we had a bill called H.R. 1, which, remember I talked about prescription drugs and infrastructure. For the people, when we won our election, we said for the people, we had three things. One, to lower the cost of health care by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, protecting the pre-existing condition benefit, and the second was for the people, we would increase paychecks by building the infrastructure of America in a green way, and that's very important, the climate issue. And third, for the people, we would have cleaner government. And in that legislation, it was really very important in the election. People said, well, it's about jobs, it's about health care. No, it's about integrity in government too. Because if people believe that their vote counts or their voice is heard, that's very important. And there's so much concern that people don't think that. And so this would lower the voice of dark special interest money in politics, H.R. 1. It would reward small donors by matching funds. It would stop voter suppression, which is rampant in our country. It would have commission redistricting so that it's not partisan. It would also reauthorize the Voting Rights Act. So it was all removing obstacles of participation, including the obstacle that big money suffocating the airwaves is. So that is something we can do. I think we can get help from the administration on prescription drugs, I hope so. On building infrastructure, I hope so. Cleaner government, not so. We have to win the election for sure to make that happen. But it's essential. Now, it doesn't do anything about the Electoral College. That's a constitutional question. So in that case, we just have to get out a big vote and win big in order to offset the compromises that had to be made in order to have a constitution and then go from there. But it is important. And you see, if you care about climate change and you care about gun violence prevention, and I have my gun here, my bullet, I wear it all the time. This is if they could, we've sent this bill over a year ago to the Senate. It's sitting there. It would save lives, just common sense background check legislation. But I don't need a reminder, but I want everybody to know it's of the highest priority. But anyway, you say it's about gun. So if you think the gun industry owns the Congress, the Republicans in Congress, if you think the fossil fuel industry owns the powers that be in Congress, it's almost hopeless. But if you believe that if you reduce the role of dark gun money and dark fossil fuel money and dark pharma money and all the money that stands in the way of people's interest rather than the special dark interest, then that's more confidence in the system. So I would say the Electoral College is tougher because that would require a constitution, but such a vote in the Senate that we would never get because that's the way it is. But the other things we can do, and we must persist. We must persist. And one of the things about campaigns is you have to raise money to win. But what I keep saying to people is raising money to win so that we can reduce the role of money in politics. And I'll tell you this also about women. I do believe if we lower the role of money in politics and increase the civility in politics, we'd have more women and others willing to take a chance and run for office. And that's really important for our country. So thank you for your interest in that kind of change.
I'm so sorry, we're all out of time for questions.
I know, we're done. I'm sorry.
So I answered too long. Can we just hear what their questions are with no answers, or is that it?
No, we have to wrap.
We have to, it's
we
radio.
have to wrap. Yeah, it's
Thank
radio.
you, Sirius
It's radio.
Radio. Right.
But it's been such an honor to host you for Women's History Month and the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. Thank you to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you. Let's thank Julie.
This has been a SiriusXM and Georgetown University Institute of Politics and Public Service at the McCourt School Town Hall. Thanks to Megan Lieberman, Dave Gorab, Liz Aiello, Catherine Caperton, and Patrick Faris. And of course, thanks to Mo Alathe, Carly Henry, Kelly Ogburn, and all GU Politics. I'm Julie Mason. This is SiriusXM.
Let's thank Julie Mason.
Thanks.